With these words, I present to you the High Commissioner of Bangladesh.
President of the English-speaking Union of Pakistan, Mr. Aziz Memon, office bearers and members of English-speaking Union of Pakistan, Deputy High Commissioner of Bangladesh, Mr. Helal, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good afternoon to you all. My sincere thanks and gratitude goes to President Memon for his cordial invitation, warm reception, and kind introduction made for me. It is indeed my privilege to say a few words before this enlightened gathering. Bangladesh and the United Nations has been chosen as today's topic, not because I'm an expert on UN, but because I have an abiding interest in United Nations since my early days of career in Bangladesh mission to the United Nations as a second secretary in the years 96 to 99, as already mentioned by President Memon. As a foreign policy practitioner, I recognize that United Nations Charter has been at the core of foreign policy of Bangladesh. Indeed, even before Bangladesh became a member of the United Nations in 1974, the constitution of newly independent Bangladesh in 1972 included the Article 25, which affirmed that the state shall base its international relations on, among others, the principles enunciated in the UN Charter. In his first statement at the UN General Assembly, soon after the membership at the UN, the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, stated, "The noble ideals enshrined in the UN Charter are the very ideals for which millions of our people have made supreme sacrifice." In spite of being a relatively small country during that time in 1974, Bangladesh made her presence felt at the United Nations through her proactive engagement. This activism was basically due to two reasons. First, the progressive values of Bangladesh found a resonance in those of the United Nations. And second, multilateralism is always advantageous to a small country like Bangladesh, in contrast with bilateralism. And there is no better platform for multilateral diplomacy than the United Nations. Within just 5 years from becoming a member, Bangladesh was elected a member of the coveted membership of UN Security Council for the term 1979 to 80. And again, after 2 decades from 2000 to 2001. In the period 82 to 83, Bangladesh played a pivotal role as the chairman of the Group of 77 for the developing countries of the world in UN. The country's foreign minister was the president of UN General Assembly in 1986. Currently, Bangladesh is an elected member in as many as 20 UN bodies. Among the important ones, the executive or governing boards of UNICEF, UNESCO, ILO, World Food Programme, Human Rights Council, Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, Committee on Migrant Workers, Chairman of Organization of Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, etc. are worth mentioning. However, beyond these organizational leadership roles, Bangladesh has also been playing a prominent role in substantive areas of the work of UN. The focus of engagement of Bangladesh has traditionally been in the spheres of peace and development. I will briefly highlight some of them. True to her profound commitment to international peace, Bangladesh in 2001 tabled its flagship resolution titled Culture of Peace and Nonviolence at the UN General Assembly. Since then, this resolution has been adopted under Bangladesh stewardship every year with some minor modifications until today. The process of these successive resolutions is that the United Nations declared 2001 to 2010 as the decade of culture of peace and nonviolence for the children of the world, and also an adoption of program of action on culture of peace. During her membership of UN Security Council in year 2000 and 2001, Bangladesh was instrumental in the first ever UN Security Council resolution on women, peace and development. In the year 2011, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina presented a peace-centric people's empowerment and development model. The essence of this model is that it is the people which can bring about development in a country if they are empowered and if an atmosphere of peace is ensured. The UN General Assembly welcomed this resolution, and next year, in 2012, adopted the model as a UN document for following by other developing countries. Inspired by the same commitment to peace, Bangladesh has been making tangible contribution to peace on the ground around the world. Since the beginning, her journey in the UN peacekeeping mission in '88, with just 15 observers in UNIMOC after Iran-Iraq war, Bangladesh has gradually emerged as one of the largest contributor to UN peacekeeping. Bangladesh has so far participated in 54 peacekeeping missions in 40 countries, with a total of 151,023 members. According to August statistics, Bangladesh ranks second after Ethiopia, with deployment of 7,636 peacekeepers in 10 missions. In 2015, Bangladesh went down in history by sending its first all-female peacekeeping unit of 160 members to Haiti. Last year, a Bangladeshi Major General was appointed the commander of UN peacekeeping force in Cyprus. So far, 132 Bangladeshi peacekeepers have embraced martyrdom in the line of duty. Bangladeshi peacekeepers are now also serving as peace builders in fragile post-conflict situations to prevent relapse into conflict and to promote sustainable peace and development. Bangladesh was the chair of Peace Building Commission in the year 2012 and hosted a summit-level meeting of the Peace Building Commission. In last year, Bangladesh established a Peace Building Center, which is second of its kind in Asia, to develop capacity of peace building activities such as election management, administrative, judicial, security sector reform in conflict regions, human rights promotion, disaster management, socio-economic development. For their non-partial contribution to the areas of their duty, the Bangladeshi peacekeepers have earned the respect and gratitude of the host society. For example, a town in Ivory Coast have named a thoroughfare after Bangladesh as Bangladesh Road. And the government of Sierra Leone has recognized Bangla as one of the third state language of that country. Ladies and gentlemen, Bangladesh considers disarmament as an important key to enhancing peace and security around the world. And Bangladesh remains at the forefront of UN's diplomacy in favor of general and complete disarmament. The country is party to the core disarmament treaties like Non-Proliferation Treaty, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, Chemical Weapons Convention, Biological Weapons Convention, Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, Certain Conventional Weapons Convention, etc. The country stands out in South Asia as the first South Asian country to have signed the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and Anti-Personnel Landmine Treaty. And this July, Bangladesh was one of the 122 countries at the UN General Assembly in UN to have voted in favor of adoption of the latest treaty on prohibition of nuclear weapons. And in this September, Bangladesh is one of the 50 countries that signed this convention. Of course, many nuclear weapon states have not participated in the process. In the spirit of amicable settlement of disputes, Bangladesh has convinced her neighbors to accept judicial option available under UN for resolving the 40-year-old dispute concerning the delimitation of maritime boundaries in the Bay of Bengal. Accordingly, Bangladesh and Myanmar settled the long-standing maritime issue in 2012 at International Tribunal for Law of the Sea in Hamburg. Similarly, Bangladesh and India did so in 2014 at Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. We recognize that terrorism poses a serious challenge to peace and tranquility around the world. So, consistent with Bangladesh's counterterrorism commitment, we have become party to 14 of the 14 UN and international conventions and protocols regarding counterterrorism. The country's Anti-Terrorism Act has been amended twice over the last couple of years to integrate it with the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy. Now I will briefly turn to a development front. Bangladesh chalked out and implemented elaborate programs in line with Millennium Development Goals and in partnership with UN. I will not go into the detail, but would just like to mention that UN Secretary General termed Bangladesh as a role model for developing countries for achieving most of the MDGs. Bangladesh articulated the interests of developing countries at the UN negotiation on post-MDG development agenda, which led to the adoption of Sustainable Development Goals. Being serious about SDG implementation, Bangladesh has integrated SDGs in her 7th five-year plan. This year at the UN General Assembly in New York in September, Bangladesh hosted 2 SDG events. One on SDG implementation, finance and monitoring, and other titled Creating a Policy Vision for SDG Finance. Apart from this general thrust on the issue of development, Bangladesh has concentrated her efforts on a few selected sectors of development. So I will just highlight some of them. As one of the most vulnerable countries, Bangladesh has been vocal in climate diplomacy. The country hosted the Climate Vulnerable Forum in 2011, and again tabled a resolution on climate change and human rights at the UN Human Rights Council in 2012. During the negotiations relating to the Paris Agreement of UNFCCC, Bangladesh flagged the importance of giving attention to adaptation rather than on mitigation, at least for the vulnerable countries which needs immediate assistance. Perhaps you are aware that mitigation is the issue where the developed countries are requested to reduce their emission to ultimately arrest the climate change and temperature rise. But adaptation is another idea which says, in spite of these mitigation effects, impacts of climate change are happening. They are visible in vulnerable countries. So these countries which are already being affected, they need assistance. So that's why Bangladesh, as one of those affected countries, has articulated the need for giving attention to adaptation. So as a result, the Paris Agreement came up with some ideas that gives the adequate attention to the issue of adaptation. Consequently, the Green Climate Fund and LDC Fund now focus greater attention to adaptation. At present, Bangladesh is also a member of Adaptation Fund Board, Loss and Damage Executive Committee, and consultative group of experts on UNFCCC. Like many other populous developing countries, Bangladesh views that migration is an important catalyst for development. However, much in the migrant receiving society in the world, the migration is viewed in a negative perspective. This is caused by rightist politics and security apprehensions. So in different international negotiations, Bangladesh has played a proactive role in promoting a positive narrative about migration. And indeed, Bangladesh was instrumental in inclusion in the SDG, the issue of migration. So now migration is now point 10.7 in the Sustainable Development Goals. In the past, many countries did not recognize the migration as something that has to do with development. They thought migration is just a threat to the developed countries. Like the idea was just illegal migration, that was the idea. But now we have established that migration can also contribute to development, both to sending countries as well as receiving countries. So last year there was New York Declaration on Refugees and Migrants. So it was an epoch-making declaration where migration was recognized as an important element, and Bangladesh was instrumental in bringing about an agreement in that declaration to agree to adopt a global compact on migration by the year 2018. This global compact on migration is an idea, a phrase which has been coined by Bangladesh. To carry forward this negotiation on migration, Bangladesh in the last December hosted the 9th Global Forum on Migration and Development. And now Bangladesh is actively participating in the process of elaborating a global compact on migration. As a country imbued with humane values, Bangladesh is very much involved in the issue of rights and well-being of persons with autism and neurodevelopmental disorders. Bangladesh took the lead in the adoption of the first ever UN General Assembly resolution on autism, titled Addressing the Socio-Economic Needs of Individuals, Families and Societies Living with Autism Spectral Disorder and Other Developmental Disabilities in 2012. The country also hosted international conferences on autism in Dhaka in 2015 and Bhutan in 2017. The daughter of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, Ms. Saima Wazid Hussain, is the chairperson of Shuchona Foundation that works in this area. For the relentless efforts of this foundation under leadership of Ms. Saima Hassan Wazid in the field of autism in home and abroad, she has been designated as the Autism Champion of Southeast Asia by WHO. And she is also a member of WHO Expert Advisory Panel on Mental Health. Over the last decades, Bangladesh's development diplomacy has largely been marked by its leadership of 47-member group of least developed countries. As a success story of being in the process of graduating from LDC status, Bangladesh also wants other LDCs to graduate from LDC status. However, there is some anxiety about the discontinuation of some privileges currently given to LDCs, such as duty-free and quota-free access, once an LDC graduates. To appease that anxiety, the Bangladesh chairmanship has ensured the inclusion of some safeguard provisions in the relevant UNGA resolutions for targeted and time-specific support for graduating and graduated LDCs. That means even after they go out of the LDC status, they can still receive some support so as to encourage them to be weaned from the LDC status. Bangladesh chairman was also instrumental in establishment of a technology bank for LDCs under UN. Ladies and gentlemen, I am near the end of my speech. Before that, I would like to say that peace and development can survive and thrive only in an atmosphere of cooperation and solidarity. With that spirit in mind, Bangladesh sponsored quite a number of resolutions. I'll just mention some of them. Strengthening of coordination of emergency humanitarian assistance of UN, strengthening UN's mediation function, interaction between UN, national parliaments, and IPU, Inter-Parliamentary Union. Currently, Bangladesh has been president of IPU for the last 3 years. However, the most historic and significant resolution that Bangladesh has ever sponsored is perhaps the one at UNESCO in 1999 that proclaimed 21st February as the International Mother Language Day. Pakistan was one of the co-sponsors of this resolution, and International Mother Language Day is now celebrated across the world, including in Pakistan. It is true that UN has not always lived up to the full expectation of the people around the world. However, we need to keep in mind that UN is not a supranational body, but an intergovernmental organization under the control of member states, which have their own political and economic priorities. In spite of these shortcomings, Bangladesh reposes our trust and confidence in UN as the only viable and legitimate global body to address issues of global peace, justice, human rights, and development. Bangladesh remains committed to revitalization and reform of the UN to enable it to better respond to the emerging challenges of this century. Thank you for your attention.